Welcome back to the Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. Here's your host, Bishop Larry Gators.
Thank you so much, Brother Andrew. 609-614-3801. Again, quickly, beloved, 609-614-3801. Welcome back to hour number 2 here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio and Media Group. And we are so very excited to be a part of the international conglomerate, the iHeart Radio Network, in the iHeart Media Group. All right, 609-614-3801. Please continue to send in your questions. We will get to them before the hour is up at Global Spiritual Revolution Radio at yahoo.com. Again, quickly, beloved, Global Spiritual Revolution Radio at yahoo.com. Pastor Scott, I want to kind of pick up where I left off, and I'm getting a lot of emails from people stating that their minds are blown concerning Berkshire Hathaway, right? That the bricks that are strategically located throughout, not just Minneapolis, and as a side note, Springfield, Minnesota is the headquarters of Antifa. How convenient is that? But all of these bricks on these pallets owned by the Berkshire Hathaway Group, because the Acme Brick Company, there is a satellite plant in Springfield, Minnesota. Okay, Bill Gates is a former board member of the Acme Brick Company. So then Berkshire, that's owned by Warren Buffett, and I know people are so in love with this Sunnybrook Farm persona that Warren Buffett has, but he is a devil just like, Jay Pritzker and Bill Gates. So it cannot be by accident that Antifa, through the Acme Brick Company, that is owned by Berkshire Hathaway, and formerly owned by the Marmon Group. Now, the Marmon Group out of Chicago was created by Governor Jay Pritzker in the late Robert Pritzker, okay, who are major supporters, some of the Pritzker family, of both Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. Now, quickly here, all of the buildings, the businesses, 80%, okay, not all, but 80% of those businesses that were destroyed and decimated in Minneapolis are insured through the Berkshire Hathaway, okay, National Indemnity Company. So then the National Indemnity Company, okay, which underwrites, okay, through insurance companies and corporations and businesses, not in every single company and business in Minneapolis, but the majority of them. Only those businesses that were destroyed were insured through Berkshire Hathaway, a.k.a. through the National Indemnity Company. And a quick side note before we give the floor over to you, man of God, also the Berkshire Hathaway Assurance Bond Insurance Company, okay? The Assurance Bond Insurance Company through Berkshire Hathaway, they provide funding for those when they get arrested, they can get out of jail. You understand? This is crazy, man of God. Again, I'm not castigating Warren Buffett, but I'm saying that we have to connect these ley lines concerning the National Indemnity Company that is, legally underwriting as far as insurance of some of these companies and businesses, not all, but a lot of them in Minneapolis, but they've been destroyed. But the buildings that have not been destroyed are not insured by Berkshire Hathaway. I don't think that this is by accident. And as a side note, there is a company called the Medical Protective Company that they provide liability insurance for medical companies that make the face mask, okay? The personal protective equipment. Well, who owns the medical protective liability company? Berkshire Hathaway. So, man of God, it seems like this conspiracy is so layered, what I call the compartmentalization of darkness. What say you, man of God?
Well, I think the first time, I think we need to step back just a moment and acknowledge that if Warren Buffett's name is coming up repeatedly,
yes,
I mean, it isn't something that we can say that we're not going to castigate him. We need to.
Right.
I'm sorry. This is just being truthful. This is okay. So let me just do a quick sideline on that. I'm going to come back to this, but I want to just do a little skew out on something. Right?
Yes, sir.
There is an event that has been catching a lot of media attention, and I've interceded on it. I somewhat fell for it, and I'm still not completely 100% either way. But the event is that there was a group of National Guards supposedly that took a knee with the Black Lives Matter. Okay, it's an extreme. There's a couple of extremely provocative videos, emotionally provocative. One of which is one of the Black Lives Matter leaders is calling out the president as a psychopath and trying to incite a race war. Okay, and you then see this captain who concedes to taking a knee with her. Now, I'm bringing this up for a particular reason.
Yes, sir.
This video, number one, doesn't establish anything other than we know it's a video. And from what I can tell, it looks like a lot of it was staged. Okay, and that's one of the reasons I took the post down that I had. But nonetheless, it establishes a couple of things. One, that there is a expectation that we have in these events of how people are to conduct themselves. One of those things in this example is that the military should never cross the lines in a political dispute. End of story. You're in uniform. It is your role to maintain peace. It is never your role to take a side. Because when you do like that, you take a side with a protester, you immediately split the population, and you identify with one rather than the other, and you no longer become a neutral party for establishing security and peace. Okay? Number two, if the videos were in fact false, or if they're true either way, the main control element, which is the National Guard Bureau, needs to make a statement one way or the other. They need to either justify it or they need to denounce it, not leave it in ambiguity, which causes more and more confusion, more especially on social media, which also increases the level of divisiveness. If you choose not to make a statement, then it is the same issue as if you want divisiveness to continue. So I bring all this back to Warren Buffett. These accusations are profound, and they are continuing, and they are being looked at very critically. So he has an obligation to make a statement to it. He can choose to lie. He can choose to remain silent. He can choose to tell the truth. My guess is he won't choose to tell the truth. And my second guess is he will choose not to lie. Because in doing so, by choosing to remain quiet, you continue to infuse and empower divisiveness amongst the people. People are literally saying things like, well, I don't know where these bricks came from. Well, that may be the case, and I will agree with that. He probably does. Somebody does. I'll tell you that. Somebody does. And I will guarantee you what you were saying is Antifa knows where every single one of them is.
Yes.
Okay? Antifa is what we need to look at. So I'm continuing with this line here. When we look at Antifa, Antifa is by itself a headless organization. They're very much an anarchist type structure. So they don't have a specific head leader. They don't have they have cells. They're very much in that sense very much how Al Qaeda was structured. Okay, so they're individual cells that all kind of give centralized orders. But what Antifa does have is Antifa is an umbrella organization that links hundreds of other organizations. So when President Trump and AG Barr declared Antifa a domestic terrorist organization, that means that anybody that has touched Antifa to support them, attend a meeting, send them an email, send them a text, having a conversation with them, shaking their hand, giving them a bottle of water, whatever it is, or participating actively. Every person is now linked to domestic terrorism. To what degree you're guilty, that will be determined as they do the investigation. But nobody will escape this. This is the catch-all and trap that Antifa created for itself. So Berkshire Hathaway, though hidden around, and though Berkshire Hathaway was independently dropping bricks, we'll say, if that's proven to be the case, then the fact that you delivered the bricks, if Antifa touches that brick, it is now, Berkshire Hathaway is now culpable and can be held accountable to aiding and abetting a domestic terrorist organization. This goes with anybody, and this is one of the reasons I put up this podcast tonight called Reflect. It was geared very much towards this younger generation. I can guarantee you this younger generation is not going to like to hear what I have to say, and that's okay. But my reminder is this, is that you are this goes back to what we were saying in the first hour. You are at a decision point in your life if you're participating in these protests. The protests were all okay until you started to burn buildings down. And I can already hear the echoes of people saying, I didn't burn a building down. I was just there to protest the violence of the police officer. Okay? But you were part of an event that led to buildings being burned down, people being killed, innocent businesses being gutted and looted. And whether you were directly or indirectly involved, if you were participant in the event and anywhere near it, that umbrella catch now is if any of those people involved were Antifa, you are now tied, no matter what you like to, however that makes you feel, you are now linked to Antifa. And there is no statute of limitations on a domestic terrorist. I just want to be clear about that. So it is a big decision for this youth to decide how they want to participate. Peaceful protests are part of the First Amendment. It is part of what we are as a nation. It is part of what we are in speaking truth to power. And there are reasons that we have that because, especially when we get a corrupt government, it is one of the most powerful means of communicating a cause. But when you're being manipulated by somebody, and when you have agents that are within your mass that are doing things like burning buildings, beating up people, shooting police officers, whatever else, and committing additional crimes, looting buildings worth for millions of dollars of jewelry or of computers or whatever that is. Everybody in that circle, as we know, is suspect until proven innocent. And this is the opposite direction of what our foundation is in justice. Yes. But that's because we switched from being a constitutional base to dealing with domestic terrorism. And worse yet is that the Patriot Act is now in effect. I'm not a fan of the Patriot Act. I'm not a fan of any of this situation right now in the way that the judicial piece works. I'm simply speaking to fact. And the fact of the matter is that with the Patriot Act, anybody that is picked up can be held indefinitely without charge. That is in the Patriot Act. So what has been triggered here, and we go back to this discussion of Berkshire Hathaway, they have used an entire youth to, at the end, rake millions, if not billions of dollars out of the system for their own benefit. And the only people right now on the front line that are going to pay a cost are the youth. They will use them, they will abuse them, they will kick them out to the curb, and no one will care. Because at the end of the day, Americans want stability and justice, and the entire message of what was attempted to be done is gone. Worse yet, it's been manipulated and it has been hijacked. Yesterday, this entire nonsense of mute, the Black Mute Day or whatever it was.
Right.
Okay. That was an entire merchandising effect for big corporations. I can't tell you the number of emails I got trying to gin up support for their own companies, saying things like, in support of the Black Lives Matter event, we're going to not take any sales today, which tells people, oh, I love you so much, I'm going to buy more the next day. That's all they did. They capitalized on it. They didn't gain anything. You just made a bunch of elites more wealthy. Thanks. And again, I'm brutal on these comments. It's thanks to stupidity that you got there. You didn't understand the system. You're not changing anything. You're empowering it more because you're playing within their hand. If we anchor ourselves within faith and we walk together in faith, we don't have the violence. We have the discussions. We have prayer. We have unity. We have a common understanding. We have a mourning for loss, and then we get to the deeper places of what do we need to do to change. And you bring people with you. You don't burn bridges down. Right now, we have a youth I'm looking at comments right now that I'm getting up here on these latest podcasts. And I'm not posting. I don't allow some of them to be posted because they are so angry at the youth, unbelievably angry. And to be honest, it's rightfully earned because these are people that have witnessed friends or witnessed people that they know, businesses being burned, looted, trashed, for nothing. For what? Because one person was killed by another person in a very violent act. You know, I made a comment in this podcast, and I'll bring it here. As this youth marches, and as they march towards wanting justice for this event in Minnesota, let's stop for just a moment and let me ask all of them, if they're listening, what's the justice for the hundreds of thousands of children, babies, that are aborted every year before they even have a chance to be a protester? Yes. What's that justice? And in that sense, in this youth, if you're going to turn your back on those, the unborn, you have now become unhuman. You have had humanity stripped from you because you can judge. You can accept the aborting of a child as if it's an okay act for birth control. And these events are not disconnected, because if you've lived in a world where aborting a new life is normal, burning down somebody's business, beating up somebody because you're angry, to justify or to vent your anger because of a single killing becomes your rationality. It is unbelievable what has been accomplished in brainwashing this youth. And this is, again, a moment in time when this youth, in my opinion, the world is being tested. But God does not play. We are at a point of atonement right now. And you and I have talked about the Old Scriptures before, and why I like the Old Testament, because unlike the New Testament, the Old Testament has God's unlimited love and God's complete and total wrath. And we seem to forget that, because God is always a loving God, but he is equally a wrathful God. It is not one or the other. It is both. And we are at a place right now when this time has come. God does not give you an excuse for not coming to him in faith. He gives you plenty of opportunities, and he brings you to that place. And right now, this is that time. That hand is being extended for those that are out here to seek God, to find him, to find comfort and solace and wisdom within faith. But if you turn your back on it and you continue to worship this nonsense of the media, this nonsense of exploited events, this nonsense of politicians, that's worshiping a false idol. And in the end of the day, there's a consequence for that. And that's why I say we're at a division point in society. We've had the first test, which was COVID. How many people completely gave their life, their soul, their belief, their faith to fear? Many. So round two comes. And round two is now an event manipulated by the media. Again, how many people are standing up for the right, or how many people are falling into the worship of fear and anger? If you're going that way, little by little, we're sorting the wheat from the chaff. And God is doing this right now. These aren't just, it's again using Lucifer's tricks against him. Because at the end of the day, God is sorting out his children. And this is where we are right now. And this sorting out is happening right before us. And those that are holding on to faith, no matter how hard it is painful to watch what's happening. It's infuriating. I do not excuse myself in any way from the emotions of feeling anger, of feeling frustrated, to feeling hurt, to feeling just like, what is going on? But at the end of the day, there's always the single pivot that brings us back to center, which is prayer and faith and trust in God. And that's what this youth is being offered. And they had best take it, because I don't know where this is going. But I can tell you, we are at a culmination of time, of humanity, to where there is a judgment of sort coming. And it doesn't mean it's going to be chariots from the sky and fire and brimstone. It could be as simple as two realities coexisting at one time. Mm-hmm. And that second reality could be one of living hell, and the other reality could be perpetual joy and plentiful happiness. But they can coexist. And if you think not, all you have to do is study the science. It's called quantum physics. They can coexist. Yeah. So if that is where we're headed, then I would highly suggest those that are raging with anger and beating the drum and trying to claim racial superiority over another race or whatever, to knock it off. Go to God, get on your knees, pray, and hear what he has to say, because the guidance won't be that. The guidance will be unity, and the guidance will be faith.
Again, I'm telling you, this is indeed a very powerful discussion tonight, because our hearts are heavy, because not only what happened to George Floyd, and it's interesting, he has this tattoo on his chest. I've been getting a multiplicity of emails, for the past few days. People are asking me, what does the tattoo on the chest have to do with George Floyd? And that's a Masonic term. You made mention of the snake eating its own tail. We call it the Ouroboros, right? That mamba, and we talked about Kobe Bryant some weeks ago. But you talked about this victim, why certain victims stay attached to their victimizer. There's a term called Stockholm Syndrome. And to our global spiritual revolution partners, that term Stockholm Syndrome simply means that the victim, is attached to his or her victimizer, where the victimizer becomes the victim and the victim becomes the victimizer. And so when I'm seeing across the country through the mind of God, I'm seeing that Antifa is the psyop of the serpent, going back to Genesis chapter 3. And I want to share this with you, man of God. You already know this, but the Spirit of the Lord had spoken to me about 2 weeks ago about exposing what's going on. That when we go back to Genesis chapter 3, the serpent has three paradigms. The serpent, coming from that Hebrew term, nakash, means the body of darkness. And the snake is the character of the serpent, and through which the snake, which is the character of the body of the serpent, becomes manifested into what we call a species. Now, on this planet, we have over 3,000 different types of species of serpents whose character is a snake, and its manifestation is that of a species. In other words, what the bishop is saying, that Antifa is the species of the character of the snake within the body of the serpent. Because George Soros, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, all right, Adam Schiff, the entire global deep state Luciferian system is this serpent trying to fundamentally change the United States of America. And again, I'm getting a lot of emails from people as we speak, man of God, stating that they had no idea concerning Berkshire Hathaway. And there's a major construction company that's owned by Berkshire called the Clayton Homes Corporation, where they supply the reconstruction of homes and businesses, okay? So in other words, they create the catastrophe, okay? Derek Chauvin and George Floyd, okay, in the Powder section of Minneapolis. Powder means powder keg. Is that interesting? And then after the riots began, okay, now the bricks are sent out by Berkshire Hathaway through the Acme Brick Company, okay, and if Berkshire denies the fact that they were behind the distribution of the bricks, okay, then someone needs to go to jail. So Berkshire, through the Acme Brick Company, in connection to the Mormon group out of Chicago, through the Prisker family, sending thousands of pallets of bricks all over the country. And those that are connected to Bernie Sanders are paying young black people to destroy their own communities so that Berkshire Hathaway and the Mormon group can cash checks because they have underwrote through insurance those companies and businesses and homes in Minneapolis. But yet, if you try to reveal this to a young person, they don't get it, man of God. And let me say this before, oh my God, this is so heavy tonight as we're talking about this paradigm of manipulation through the psyop, or what I call the paralysis of emotion. Now, remember the 1992 LA riots, which is, again, the same thing that happened back on the 25th last month, okay? So you got Rodney King, okay? Now, the federal government at that time, through the Bush administration, okay, through the Housing and Urban Development Department, or HUD, wanted to totally transformed South Central. And this is before the riots, okay, after Rodney King was beat down. So the federal government wanted to, through gentrification, in reviving the old housing covenants, going back to the 1920s, through segregation, wanted to create a catastrophe, okay, problem, reaction, solution, this time in 1991, 92, okay, through Rodney King, who years later is found in his swimming pool dead. That's interesting. So then, now the LA riots, okay, where black folk, through problem, reaction, solution, destroys their own community. Well, they have just accomplished the very plan of the deep state, using black people and their pain, weaponizing their trauma to destroy their community in South Central, Watts, and Compton, so that Bush Sr. and Housing and Urban Development can go into South Central, Watts, and Compton to tear down those homes that were vandalized through rioting, to build high-rise condos, okay, and bring in brand new businesses, jack up the price of those businesses by removing and forcing black people out of it. In other words, what I'm saying, this is a game, Brother Scott. And when I tell black people this, they don't see it. So in other words, this was a political displacement of a people whose trauma was weaponized through gentrification, housing covenants, removing black families from homes that they've been in South Central since the 1940s, okay, before and during and after World War II. Now, in the 1970s, we saw the deindustrialization of urban America. So then, before and during the advent of World War II, there were multi-million-dollar businesses and companies like Chrysler and Ford in South Central. Going up into the 1970s, all of those companies shut down and moved overseas, then which created a vacuum, Brother Scott, for the creation of the original Black Panther Party with Huey Newton, okay? So when the Black Panther Party was eventually neutralized and destroyed by J. Edgar Hoover through COINTELPRO, and to our global spiritual revolution partners, you may be wondering, Bishop, what is COINTELPRO? It means counterintelligence. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brother Scott. It is a political psyop that the FBI is still doing, where they would infiltrate black organizations, not just black organizations, any organizations that they deem to be a threat, like the Black Panther Party, the Nation of Islam, and Malcolm X's Organization of Afro-American Unity. As a quick side note, if I can pick up where you left off concerning Malcolm X, and you are 100% right, man of God. Malcolm X preached separation. Now, when Malcolm X left the Nation of Islam, okay, in March of 1964, Malcolm X abandoned that doctrine of separation and began to teach integration because of his trip to the Hajj, okay, then coming back to America, and that's when Malcolm became a threat because he wasn't teaching white people were blue-eyed devils. He was exposing, okay, black corruption within the Nation of Islam. That's why they took him out, okay? Now, getting back to the LA riots, and I'll just move myself out of the way. So after the riots were over, in other words, as a sign of, it took President Bush Sr., 3.5 days to send in the military or the National Guard. He purposely waited until a traumatized reactionary people would destroy their community. They wouldn't go to Brentwood, they wouldn't go to Beverly Hills, but they destroyed the same community, okay, that they are living in today, and a lot of them had to leave because of this gentrification through Bush Sr. But see, black people, not all black people, I'm not castigating my own people, but I'm teaching them how to think on a level without the psyop of emotionalism. So then people like George Floyd, Eric Garner, okay, Rodney King, Trayvon Martin, Freddie Gray in Baltimore, they were nothing but pawns in the hands of the Luciferian puppet masters of the left to destroy these black communities so that the federal government on the left can go in to rebuild those communities, jack up the price, force black people out of their communities. In other words, man of God, this is a game that these devils have been perpetuating time and time again. This is what I call a parapsychology operation. This is the art of war that Pastor Scott and I are teaching everyone tonight. Black, white, it doesn't matter what your race or ethnicity is. Our responsibility is to teach you the spiritual rules of engagement. This is how, in order for us to defeat Satan, we must know how Satan is thinking. Am I correct in saying this, man of God?
Yes. I'm gonna, as a really amazing view that you just gave, Bishop, and I'm very impressed because so many details you brought in there.
Thank you, sir.
This is where I want to take this from the very big high level, and I want to put this in qualification. So I lived in Philadelphia, and I lived down in Fishtown for a while, a couple of years. And Fishtown was a gentrified area. And just by virtue of the history of Fishtown, because it was very much a blue-collar working class area, Fishtown is predominantly, so I'm clear with this, predominantly white, okay? But it's become gentrified now. Most of that working class element's been pushed out, and you're getting a lot of New Yorkers, techies, things like that coming in. Excuse me. So 3 blocks from Fishtown, just past the L, is one of the highest and death rates in the country. In that area, it's predominantly Black America, and it's tragic. I don't know how else to put it. There is at least 1 shooting and 1 and 2 heroin, fentanyl-based overdoses every night. Philadelphia doesn't report its statistics, but it's higher than Chicago on the number of deaths. Okay? And that's 3 blocks from where I lived. This is where I like to put this in context. That is not a life. Right. And it's tragic. I didn't walk through those areas going, oh, hey, look, this is Black America. I walked through that area with my heart hurting because this was America, period. Take hyphenization out. I've been all over the world. I've been in third world hellholes. This in Philadelphia, as an example, is the worst. It's in many ways worse than Tijuana, border town, because there's no soul left. There's people that have given up. In Tijuana, you at least still find people that are fighting for survival. Over there, people just gave up to drugs and guns. So the thing that I like, right now we have a huge push going on by the socialists, and they're hitting the Black community hard. This is their time. They're trying to seize power. And they're trying to sway Black America into a promise of an easy future. So I look at it, and the way I'm going to frame it is like this. And I'm not isolating Black America. It just happens to be the reality of where the socialists are targeting, and that should bother everybody. Everybody.
Yes.
Okay, because when someone's down or emotionally put out, it's like the life insurance person coming to your door after somebody in your family dies, telling you need to buy life insurance. I mean, it's just about that bad. To remind you that, oh, you just lost somebody, but you need to come here and you need to buy. You don't want that to happen to you. And in that emotional moment, you sign up for whatever the heck you sign up for. It's never good.
Right.
So here we go. If you take the concept that's very real and relevant to most inner city communities, is drugs. I want a person to tell me one time that when a drug dealer offers you something for free, that there isn't a cost tied to it. Because the answer is never. You might be given a free sample, but you are never going to get that without a cost. When a drug dealer offers you a free sample, his hope is addiction, so he has a dedicated client. When a drug dealer offers you a packet of drugs to sell and gives you a few to get your first cash load, the minute you try to do that on the second load, that might cost you a finger, it might cost you an eye, it might cost you your life. Politics is no different. Politics in this inner city, these promises of socialism, is peddling drugs. They're just peddling drugs to your emotions. Yeah. And they're coming into these places. They're not offering you faith. And by the way, for those that reject faith and say, well, life is tough and how do I make it through? There's nowhere in the Bible does it say that the walk of life and faith and belief in God is going to be easy. Stop. Because life is not intended to be. It is the trial of working with God, of moving through to a higher level, that we all move together and we all come to a higher order. But there is tough times through that, especially in the face of evil. Evil takes the form of promises. Evil does it like this. Christ died on the cross for us. All of our debts are paid. What God gives is given truly for us to enjoy and to grow from. We have no debt with that. Lucifer does not work that way. You are offered things up front, but the debt is on the back end. That means that as you are offered something, you still have a debt to pay. And the longer you go down that route, the more debt you owe. That's the Luciferian way. So when these people come in and offer you great promises, we're going to give you this, we're going to give you a free this, we're going to give you a promise of this, none of that comes without a cost. None of it. Because all of that debt that you are incurring is a debt that somewhere afterwards you're going to have to pay. Maybe it doesn't sound that way at first, just like the projects in every one of the big cities never promised that they were going to become the worst places for shooting galleries and crimes in the entire city. They promised you low-cost housing forever, great places, and they've become the worst places to possibly.
Yes.
All of things that the politicians offer you, when they offer you something for nothing, nothing is for free. The one respect I have many, but listen to President Trump. He's not promising you easy. He's promising you greatness based on innovation, based on work. And if that isn't in your psyche to where you don't want to do that, you want to sit back and take a free paycheck, we're back to that split again. You're making choices that are going to carry you for eternity. We're not at a place anymore where the game is up, where we get to play the game. We're literally at a culmination point, and all you have to do is look around. The Luciferians are throwing everything they can at the fire, everything. And it's creating a mass awakening across the world of people that are saying, I don't want that. I want to be with faith, with God, and I want to be able to decide my destiny, not have somebody decide for us. If you choose the other side, make sure you look at the numbers carefully. Because what the media is showing you is always an optic of groups and batches of people, but consider how big the world is. Consider how big the country is. The country is massive. You can look at a map and see the red dots all around it where Antifa and all these other Black Lives Matter and protests are happening, and it's like, oh my goodness, we're taking over the country. But you better zero in on those dots. And you better start getting an actual count on the number of people. Because I guarantee you, you're not going to tip past 1 million. You're probably going to tip close to 100,000 nationally. Maybe you'll get lucky if you get 250,000. But then you better look at the number of people that aren't included, because that silent majority is brimming. And they are not going to let their life be dictated by a minority. And so while outside everything is being peddled and it's being said like, you're going to get this, you're going to get that, they're going to these small groups to try to get into your head again. But those people are now just peddling an idea. They're peddling something that's deeply spiritually devastating, because they're getting you to give up something. The fundamental law that God has is that no one can take what you do not willingly give. But if you give your soul, if you give your willingness to let somebody else run your life, you just gave away your sovereignty. You gave away your free will, two of God's biggest gifts to us. And there's no taking that back. We are at a decision point now in humanity. And it is literally two groups. And it is you're either going to go down the left path and go down to enjoy your life as a nanny state, having everything dictated to you, or you're going the other route. Or you empower yourself with God and trust that He will lead you, and accept that it's not going to be easy. But it's going to be fulfilling in a way that no one can even describe to you, because God is always rewarding in that way. That's where we sit. So as you talk, Bishop, and we have all of these manipulations going on above, and we have all of these things happening, and it should always be a question. And I don't know why this disconnects with people. And I'm not making this a racial issue in any way, because it's on it's on all sides of the fence. How in the hell, excuse me, every time is it a white person telling us how a black person feels? I really want to know that. Because I can't. And I would really like to know why a politician has such expertise, because he's got a tag of a Democrat, to tell me what anybody in the inner city is dealing with. I would like to know, because they don't. And it's unbelievable to me that they have the gall to try to tell the people that are suffering, I know what I'm going to do for you. I know exactly what your problem is, and I'm going to give you this. We know that's not the truth. One of the greatest moments in this entire... So let me back up before I get there. When I was on we did a project called Kilroy Rising, and I was a super PAC I set up to support President Trump. Yeah. And we focused on the ruined areas of small towns and inner cities. That's where we focused. And we met with everybody. I met with militias. We met with housewives. We met with small Christian groups meeting in people's homes. And one of the greatest things we met with is we met with Bloods and Crips. And you know what was amazing about that? Their comment was, we want hope. We're willing to support President Trump. We want hope because we're tired of this. It can't happen. Okay? Now, here's what's amazing, because I wasn't surprised, but many were. If anybody was paying attention to what happened in Houston, that should have been an eye-opener, because Antifa was there. And there was fights beginning, and it was all, again, this racial nonsense. Do you know who bridged those fights? Do you know who brought peace to the rally? It was Bloods and Crips. They went out there in front of people and brought this to them, and they said, this is not going to happen. We can't tag buildings. You can't do this. You can't have violence. We marched together as one. They became leaders. That should tell people everything about what we're dealing with. They see through the nonsense. Man, they see it because they live it. We have got to get past division. We have to get to a place where we literally come together and pray. Man, if we could get everybody to stop this rhetoric and take all of these people right now, because I'll tell you what, for everybody that's out on the streets, there's 10 times more behind, 100 times more behind, and simply say, stop, we're going to pray. Stop. Yes. We're going to take it and we're going to pray. Just watch what happens. Number one, I will guarantee what will happen. The media will lose its mind. It will call every one of us crazy. Yes. And that's a great sign.
And this is mind-blowing, man of God. Oh, go right ahead, Scott. I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
I'm just saying that's what they would do. But at the same time, watch the power of God work. Oh. If you take that knee, let God do his work, just say, I'm here. You will rock this world. It would be like the entire axis of the world would shift, and this stuff would stop. I don't mean like in a second. It might take a year. Yes. But man, open that door. Just open that door. Take a knee and pray together and stop the rhetoric of race. I got the pain, man. Just let God, because God will fix that pain. Real simple. It's easy. Just open the door. You don't need to keep telling us how we have to fix it by rules. Rules are man-made. This is a God issue. Let the healing begin. Turn yourself to him. Take a knee, pray, and say, okay, Father, we're here. Now let's have a conversation. I want to listen. That's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to listen. And you watch. And you know what the most amazing thing is? And I have said this so many times, and it's what I think bothers me the most. Faith within the Black community is probably the strongest of any of the communities, and I respect that so much. So let's use it. Let's use it. Yeah. It is no longer something that needs to sit in the church walls. We have to bring it to the public square, and we have to unify around it, because it is there that we create change together with God.
And you're so right, man of God. And again, you hit a powerful nerve in me for the good. You always do this because God is greatly anointed you concerning Bloods and Crips. But before I get to them, we have back with us Pastor Scott Kesterson of the Bards of Ministries, 609-614-3801. Again, below the 609-614-3801. through the Life Radio Network, 92.9 FM, 1460 AM, and also through the iHeartRadio Network in the iHeart Media Group in New York City, New York. There was a policy that was passed, before I get to the Bloods and Crips, on the 11th of June, 1787, two Democratic congressmen, James Wilson and Charles Pinckney, proposed a policy in Congress called the 3/5 Compromise. I want all of our Global Spiritual Revolution partners to look that up. The 3/5 Compromise. It means that we know no black person during, not just going back to segregation, but going back to the time, the protracted period of time of slavery in the South was allowed to vote. So the Democrats came up with a scheme how to garner more votes by using, and I want black folk to hear me, by using the slave master. And let's take for an example. If a slave master had 100 slaves, and each slave represents a 3/5 of a vote. So 100 slaves times 3/5 equals, that's 60 votes, Brother Scott, plus the slave master and his wife, that's 62 votes. That didn't come out of the Republican Party. That came out of the Democratic Party. And others, they look, Scott, I just got to tell the truth as always. The Democratic Party, through this 3/5 compromise, they look at black America as property, as chattel, okay? A cow, a chicken, a horse, a dog. Because through the 3/5 compromise, okay, through James Wilson and Charles Pinckney, who were also Rothschild agents within the House of Representatives in 1787, they created a scheme, the 3/5 compromise. Whereas each and every slave who was not legally allowed to vote, but their personhood, their bodies, would be considered a 3/5 of a vote. So if the slave master wanted to vote for a local mayor, right, a county commissioner, a state senator, or even a congressman or a senator at the federal level, the slave didn't have a voice. So the slave was considered chattel, property, an animal. This is not by the Republican Party. This is by the Democratic Party, which black people are so attached to. And excuse me, because I am so passionate tonight, man of God, about this topic, the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. So the 3/5 compromise is still in the Constitution because of the power of the Democratic Party, which each vote of a slave, though they were not legally allowed to vote, Brother Scott, but every person was considered 3/5, not just 3/5 of a human being, but 3/5 of a vote. And that same paradigm, that same game is being played today of allowing people to vote, and they don't have no ID, okay? You don't know if they are an American citizen. And I'm going to say this again quickly, man of God. The Democratic Party is trying to weaponize the trauma not only of Black America and Latino America, but also they're trying to manipulate, and they have done this, to manipulate the emotions of the Black church. Every time a politician on the left, okay, like Joe Biden, the Clintons get in trouble legally, politically, where do they go to? A Black church. And they pander to the emotions of Black people. Oh, they're going to put you back in chains. You all know what I mean. And then you got Hillary Clinton down in Alabama some years ago singing an old Negro spiritual. In other words, Scott, they think we are stupid, but it's our fault. Why? Because we constantly, not myself as a black conservative, but the masses of black Americans constantly put these people back into power. Okay? So that's the history of the 3/5 of the vote, the 3/5 compromise. Now, the Bloods and Crips. The creators, the founders of the Bloods and Crips, we've been taught, was Raymond Lee Washington, okay? And also Sylvester Scott and Vincent Owens. We have been taught that Raymond Washington was the creator of the Crips in the early 1970s, and that Sylvester Scott and Vincent Owens were the founders of the Bloods, whose original name was called the Compton Pirates, capital P-I-R-U-S. That is a psychological term, okay, meaning to regurgitate. I want black folk to hear me tonight. Listen, so then you called yourself Compton Pirates or Compton individuals that regurgitate who? Their own people. But it was actually not these individuals that created the Bloods and Crips. It was the Central Intelligence Agency. Okay? Because, remember, after the deindustrialization of South Central, okay, and many other communities like South Central throughout the United States for America, okay, then it left a vacuum, man of God, a spiritual and emotional and a political vacuum for the original Black Panthers to come in. When the Black Panther Party, the original Black Panthers, were neutralized, and as a side note, it was H.L. Hunt, a billionaire oil man out of Texas, that was supplying Huey Newton and the Black Panther Party $100,000 a year. It was the same man, H.L. Hunt, who was also supplying the Nation of Islam $100,000 a year. And this is the reason why Malcolm exposed that. And H.L. Hunt was also supplying another $100,000 a year to the KKK and to the American Nazi Party of America, George Lincoln Rockwell, playing all of these organizations against themselves at the same time, Brother Scott, subsidizing both sides. Okay? So then after the Black Panther Party was neutralized, then came the creation of the Bloods and Crips to destroy Black America. But now, like you said, man of God, they're beginning to wake up. They're beginning to wake up because, according to the left, not the Republican Party, not us, but according to the left, Black life means nothing. Okay? It means nothing. And it's time for Black America to leave the plantation. You said this a couple of minutes ago, Pastor Scott, concerning the industrial complex, what I call the ghetto public housing industrial complex. That began during the 1964-65 Great Society New Deal through LBJ, a racist. And for some people, some reason, I don't understand, Brother Scott, Black folk love Lyndon Baines Johnson, okay, who was a Klansman, okay? And because of that Great Society, the New Deal in 64 and 65, it did not advance Black America, but put us behind 150 years. Public accommodation housing, the Robert Taylor homes that are now torn down in Chicago. Robert Taylor Homes was the biggest ghetto public housing project plantation in human history. Well, guess who is the granddaughter of Robert Taylor? Valerie Jarrett. See, this is the reason why you and I, Brother Scott, we are awakening a new generation. And I'm calling on all of my Bloods and Crips, not just in New York City, in Chicago, in Los Angeles, all over the world, to leave the plantation of death called the Democratic Party and come back to your Christian conservative roots of the Republican Party, okay? Come back home, because Nancy Pelosi giving that video speech a couple of weeks ago, telling you're not the sacrifice, but she's standing in front of her $75,000 stainless steel refrigerator. Oh, come on now. See, again, this is the psyop. What we're talking about, the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. Pastor Scott, thank you so much, and forgive me for getting excited. Again, this was a powerful, powerful interview tonight. And my friend, thank you so much, and we look forward to having you back next week here on Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, Bishop, and God bless everybody. Keep in prayer. This is more important now than ever. God bless.
Oh, this is so powerful. Thank you so much. And forgive me to all of our listeners that, the bishop didn't have time to get to your questions. There was so much to unpack. So we love you guys in Jesus' name. Go to Bards of War film.com, bardsofwarfilm.com. Also go to bardsofwar.fm, bardsofwar.fm. Financially support my brother, Pastor Scott Kesterson, and also support Global Spiritual Revolution Radio. Please go to paypal.me/GSRR Media Group. Again, quickly, beloved, paypal.me/GSRR Media Group. When you give unto the Lord, He'll give you more to give. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, shall men give into your bosom. God bless you guys. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and this too shall pass, and President Donald J. Trump will be reelected. All right, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Good night from Global Spiritual Revolution Radio.